your results, a discussion and your conclusion. Today, we would go to writing the abstract and also mention about writing the title. We do have some other elements of manuscript writing in the next 2-3 weeks. So let's go ahead. Once again, I'm sharing from my experience of multiple years of doing this as an academia, and I'm sure everyone else also has that. So this morning, ahead of the question session, we will go through an introduction which tells us why an abstract is important. We'll look at the content and the format of the abstract, and then talk about considerations when drafting an abstract. We would also understand why abstracts are important and the common flaws with abstract writing before I conclude. Once again, I declare my bias towards a biomedical field, but I've prepared this lecture in a way that is applicable to any field. What you have as an abstract here will apply anywhere. I would also consciously talk about anything where it is different for qualitative research. And then we open up the space for questions. So usually, what is an abstract? As an introduction, we know that an abstract is like a summary of the work you've already completed. I'll also note that whatever I say here is applicable for you putting together a conference manuscript. So you would only be able to develop an abstract for a manuscript after you have finished, at the minimum, a research data analysis. And as the same, if you decide to use that abstract for a conference, you would only be able to develop an abstract only after the research data analysis has been completed. And you'll see why, because structured abstract expects you to write a result. If you decide to do a conference abstract, that you've not analyzed the results, and you say, oh, the result is coming, forget it, you're not going to get that space. Except they invited you specially, and they do look for people to invite specially to come and present their works at conferences. So it is used by prospective readers also to decide whether to listen or to read the full, listen to participate at the abstract presentation if it's a conference, or read the full manuscript. But one of the big things you may not know, or many people may not know, not necessarily, decisions about if your manuscript will move to the next stage is based on the abstract. For Q1, Q2 journals, you find that the editor first reads the abstract and decide whether it will go to the person who manages the peer review process. So there are 3 processes to go in now. The editor would read. They would allocate it to maybe an associate editor or however they call it. That associate editor must agree that they want to take it. And it's this one that will now send it to the peer reviewers. All they read is your abstract. All they read is your abstract. And decisions are made on that abstract basis. For people that write abstracts for conferences, only your abstracts are read. It is only based on your abstract that people will decide, I want to come and listen to the full presentation. So your abstract is a serious thing. It's a very serious thing. People make first contact to your full presentation, to your abstract. You therefore cannot make folio of it. Don't make folio of it. And I'll explain that, also share my experience. The other thing that also happens with an abstract is that it's the abstract that is indexed, not in many places. If you Google, you find that it's just abstract that many, even non-named publisher indexed in their pieces of work. So your abstract must be done appropriately to make it powerful and accessible to more people who can then show interest in reading your work. What's an abstract? Once again, an abstract is like a summary. But this time, there's definitely things they're looking for. It also reflects the reasoning of the content. Many times in your abstract, you will need a keyword. Please note that I'll tell you about the power of keywords. For many of us here, if you're doing systematic reviews or meta-analysis, you find that it's the keywords you use that it allow your manuscript to pop up. Your keywords allows, okay? So when we consider keywords, I hope I'll get there. I hope I didn't forget this in the preparation. I'll tell you how the decisions around what goes into your keywords is very important, okay? Sorry, I adapted this abstract from what I'm reading for a conference abstract. Okay, so maybe conference things may continue to come up. Typically, your abstracts may be 100 to 250 words. I think the longest manuscript abstract I've seen is 350 words. I've not seen anything longer than 350 words. But you can learn to write abstracts, about 250 words, 300 words. More and more these days, I see a lot around 200 words. But the longest I've seen is plus, and it's 350 words. But they might be longer, but for me, that's what I've seen. And when you write an abstract, this is what they want to see. This is what the content of your abstract should be telling everybody that reads it. Why did you do the study or the project that you're reporting on? What did you do and how? What did you find? And what does the finding mean? That's the 4 questions that you answer. Why did you do? That's the background. What did you do? That's your methodology. What did you find? That's your result. What does the finding mean? That's the conclusion. Those 4 questions your abstract must answer. And you can get it once you have completed your study. So if the paper is new, if what you've done is actually new or you're dealing with that apparatus, the last question, which is the conclusion of what are the advantages of the apparatus, of the lab thing, or the new methodology, that's what you're answering. And how well does it work? So that's the last question, if what you're looking at is apparatus or devices. So this is a format of an abstract, and I'll repeat it a lot more comprehensively again, because this is very important. This is the meat of our session today. Your abstract would usually contain a background. Many times your background includes the introduction and the aim together. They don't usually separate it. There are few places, very few places that I see that they separate background and aim. Often than not, they pull it together. So the background should say, what is the importance of the study? Why should the reader be interested in the study? What's the gap? That's the first sentence. And then, of course, your second sentence is your study objective. We'll spend a whole session looking at study objective here. A SMART objective is the second sentence. Please note that in your methodology, 6 things would be found in your methodology. The study design, study population, the period when the data was collected. You will have to highlight if you are doing an analytical study, what your outcome, spell it out clearly, what your outcome and explanatory variables are. Otherwise, what we call dependent and independent variables, they must be out. And then the statistical method you used for your analysis. You use the t-square, you use the chi-square, you use the binary logistic regression analysis, you use the linear regression, you use the multinomial. You must name it and explain it. For those that do qualitative study, you must name it. You did grounded theory, you use the grounded theory approach, you use an induction analysis, you did a deductive analysis, you must mention it. These 6 things must come out in your methodology. And then you go and report your results, which includes specific data indicating the answer to your objective and making use of the data you had highlighted or the variables you had highlighted in your methodology. Those things, 2 things must come. And finally, you do your conclusion. What's the implication of this work? And how does this work add to the body of knowledge? What's the relevance? What's the way forward? That's the recommendation. Just 2 sentences. Let's go now a little bit more into details. Your abstract starts. Mr. Yaya Omar, please just put off your video, please. It's for bandwidth problem. So please put off your video. It's just to make the bandwidth okay for everybody. It's a large group, so please don't put on your video. Thank you. So for the abstract, your introduction is 2 sentences. 2 sentences. First is the highlight the gap, what the problem is. And the second sentence is your study objective. 2 sentences, that is all that is needed in your abstract. If you have to look for space to write your methodology, let the first sentence of that background go. Do not compromise the details of your methodology in your abstracts. You would hear when I said the first time about the content of each section. You find that the content of the methodology is the most. Don't compromise on the content of the methodology. You can compromise on the content of the background. You must write your result in a swift fashion, not the methodology. Okay? So, 2 sentences. What is the gap and what your objective is? Remember, we've gone through what the SMART objective is, and let that come out now. The next space is your methods. Your opening sentence in the method must tell us what the study design is. Don't let anybody go fishing for it. The target population, your study location. The next is the date of the that the data was collected. You explain your variables. If it's a descriptive, let's know what the variables are that you're describing. If it's an analytical, let's know what your dependent and independent variables are, and your confounding variables if you're going to do an adjustment in the statistical analysis. If it's a qualitative, you show us with clarity what it is, your method of data collection, looking at all this. And then your statistical tool. Was it chi? Was it logistic regression? Was it ground theory? This must come out. And you find that if you have the skills, this is not 5 sentences as a whole. It's not even 6 sentences. Where you would have a lot more sentences is where you're talking about your variables. So let's go. You'll find out that if you write the abstract, you could say something like, this is a cross-sectional study that collected data between May and June from adolescents 15 to 16 years old in Ile-Ife. I have answered 2 bullets with 1 single sentence. I repeat, this is a cross-sectional study. I've answered study design that collected data from 15 to 16-year-old adolescents. I've answered target population, residents in Ile-Ife, answered study location between January and December 2022. I have answered 4 variables in 1 single sentence. So the fact that you're looking at the 6 doesn't mean it's ordinary 6 sentence. All those details must just be there. And then you look at the study variables. My dependent variable is this, I list it. My independent variable is this. My confounding variables are this. Your statistical analysis, I use the logistic regression to determine the association between dependent and independent variables having adjusted for confounders. That's 1 sentence. But every single thing must be there. In your abstract, I would encourage you that your methodology must be 50% of your paper. If they ask you for 100 words, your methodology must be 50 words. If they say 200 words, your methodology is the big thing. The decision on the editor's table to move your manuscript forward to an handling editor is based on your methodology. Is based on the methodology they see in the abstract. Ironically, that is what suffers the most. If you go to read Q1 journals, they'll tell you all the acceptance rate is 18%, 12%. Check it. That's how high, that's how low for you it is. All the acceptance rate for those journals is 15%, 18%, 22%. But when you look at the number of articles they've published in that year with 18%, it's over 1,000. Where do you first fall? Is the abstract. That is where your manuscript first gets back to you. Once the methodology is not clear, or once you put a methodology that shows that this is going to be a problem, it falls there. The second about this methodology is this is what causes delay in the review process. I'm not talking about the other, I'm talking about Q1, Q2 journals. Because even when the editor pushes it out to an handling editor, that's the second line, handling editor. The handling editor will make a decision whether I want to take this manuscript up or not. When I work as an handling editor, what I go straight is the methodology. Once I say the methodology is flawed, I would not take it because this one is palavra. It's palavra manuscript. Why? This manuscript will keep coming back and coming back, and I would not touch it. So once the abstract is flawed, for them, before they will find an handling editor, it's a long time. So you start to see delay because your abstract is not attracting somebody to want to read it. When you now finally get an handling editor, the handling editor will now have to look for reviewers. Before they find reviewers, if your abstract is not interesting, they won't come because they don't see all this level of people except the journal editor do not see the full manuscript. And the journal editor is not going to read the full manuscript. They don't have that time. It's the abstract. So now the handling editor now has to go out and go and read, get a reviewer. It's your abstract that will attract a reviewer. Times 20, 30, they'll be looking for a reviewer. 40, they don't find because your abstract hasn't attracted somebody. So your abstract must be written in a way, and the methodology is the key. People just go straight to the methodology. Once there's a problem with, or you write a methodology and you write methodology in 2 sentences, that's the end. Though people like me, I won't touch it. I just won't touch it. You just know that this person is a young person. This person doesn't know what he's doing. So if the abstract is flawed, it's telling the person that the whole manuscript is likely to be flawed. So they just avoid it. Me, I don't have time. So a manuscript that will be making me come 3-4 times, I accept it must be interesting. It must be something peculiar. Something new, something innovative, something that when I engage with it, I also get educated. So this is how sadly it works. The next thing you write in your abstract section is your results. There are basic things that must be contained in your results. Once again, I'm going to start from the biomedical and then quantitative, which is the world I live in, and then I go to quantitative. The first sentence must be your sample size. It must introduce you to your sample size. Then you write about the description of your variables. You remember that in the methodology, you highlighted the variables that you're going to be dealing with. Age, sex, and socioeconomic status. Once you're describing your variables, please do not describe the confounders, because the confounders is just information. There's nothing you really want to do with them. It's just for information. So describe the variables. So there are 15 for your outcome and your explanatory, dependent and dependent. Describe them. 20 people did this, 30 people that did that. And I'll talk about how you write. I just reviewed the paper yesterday. I said, this person isn't writing well. And of course, at the end of the day, got a reject from me. I don't know what the other peer would do. And then, most importantly, write your inferential analysis. Please include figures. Include figures. Don't just say sex was associated with headache. Oh, so what? Everybody can say that. Anybody can say that. The only way I know you really put your hands on the computer and did an analysis is the figures must show. Your adjusted ratio is this, your 95% confidence interval is this, and your p-value is this. Put the figures. And that's the same thing for conference abstract. I've seen that forever. Without you putting the figures, there is no way anybody knows you did that. So you must put the figures. If you said the mean age is 6, you must put the standard deviation. For those of us that are writing qualitative, what you report here is your themes. What are the themes that came out? And if the themes had sub-themes, you write it. It's the themes you're looking for. Do not put a quote. There's no interest in quotes. What are the themes? The themes that came out, this is what your result is telling us. And if there are sub-themes, so you had 4 themes and 6 sub-themes, you highlight in a succinct fashion the themes that came out. Please, once again, ensure that the result you're reporting here is addressing the study objective and you're only using the variables that you've reported. Don't go out. If you did not report a variable in your methodology and you start to report the result of a variable in the result, it's just like, what? Where did this come from? So it must all flow. I'm sure by now you have heard that word over and over, that it must come up even in your dreams. It must all flow. The introduction, methodology, results, conclusion, it must all flow. They must sync together. There is a coherence. They're not just coming from anywhere. And then, of course, your conclusion is just 2 statements: the answer to your objective and the recommendation based on evidence you derive from your study. That's all. 2 statements. This is the answer. Not necessarily quoting the figure, but you must show what you have answered. And then, based on what you have answered, what is the evidence, what is recommended going forward. So let's look at this. Once again, I apologize. I'm using a biomedical background, but for qualitative, I hope you will be able to deduce what was saying. So this is a background. My objective is to understand. It is important to understand the relationship between A and B. That's the context. So my aim is to determine the association between A and B. Okay, 2 sentences. And then my methodology. This is a cross-sectional study. 1, I've talked about the study design. That recruited study participants from Ile-Ife. 2, talked about the area. I've missed out on the study population. I've missed out on that. 3, in August 2023. I've talked about the time. The explanatory variable was A, the outcome variable was B, and the confounder was C. I've talked about my variables. The logistic regression analysis, I have mentioned my statistical analysis too. If it's bivariate, if it's have mentioned my logistic, no, I didn't mention, apologies. Logistic regression analysis was conducted using multinomial regression to determine if A was a risk indicator for B after adjusting for C. Finished. So apologies, that logistic regression is an analysis type, it's not a tool. So I conducted a logistic regression analysis, a binary regression analysis, that's more like what I should say, or a linear regression, or a multinomial, or whatever it is, or multivariate, whatever it is, that's what I should have written. Was conducted to determine if A was a risk indicator for B after adjusting for C. Finish. If you put, I used P equals 0.05, it's not necessary. So this is how concise it is, but all the things must be present. Like I said, I've reviewed this. If I'm reviewing a conference abstract, I've already lost 1 or 2 marks. I lost marks by the fact that there was nothing on the study population. Is it adolescents? Is it old people? Is it... But others I got marks for. The regression analysis, I would have lost 2 marks. So I've lost 2 marks from that. And that's how conference abstract has scored. And then the results. Remember, you start your result with your sample size. There were 100 participants, of which 20 had A and 30 had B. So 1, I talked about my sample size. 2, I talked about I've described my variables, 20% A, 30% B. And then I talked about the result of my analysis. The association between A and B was statistically significant, and the odds of A having B was twice higher than those that had. And my figures are there. And then I concluded it may be important, and I'll explain why I use the word it may be important to control for A in order to reduce the risk of contracting B. Longitudinal studies are, however, required to verify the outcome of the study. Finish. I use the word may because what I did was a cross-sectional study. Okay, I did a cross-sectional study, so I cannot make a cross-inferential conclusion because it was a cross-sectional study. And that is why I said may. When you do a cross-sectional study, you cannot use terminology to suggest a causal relationship. So my findings suggest that there's a relationship, however. But my finding is saying that it might be important to control for A in order to reduce the risk of B, and my recommendation is based on longitudinal study. I could correct that and make it stronger because my conclusion should show that there's a relationship, between A and B. Okay, and that relationship is that if I control for A, I'm reducing the risk for B. Okay, and then I think I can improve on the first sentence because it doesn't directly answer the A. I can improve on that. That should be improved on by stating specifically how I have directly answered the objective. So please note that when you're drafting an abstract, you should look over the subject and the question and the significance of the idea and why it is important. Recall that when you do a study, you must be answering a question that has social value. And you must frame your question in that way. The background helps you to frame it, to suggest that this is answering a gap in knowledge, to suggest that what you're doing has social value. That's the first sentence. That is what the power of that first sentence. It is that first sentence that pull everybody in to want to read the rest of the body. That first sentence is very powerful. It must show and communicate that this is a critical gap area that you're responding to. Please once again ensure the result addresses the study objective, and please ensure the conclusions are derived from the study results. Please note that the abstract must be written within the rest of the report so as to make it complete enough to stand on its own. Okay? Well, I keep telling people that from your manuscript, there are 3 standalones that you might have. Your abstract is standalone. I'm sure many of you here, just like myself, you would reference a paper in your manuscript just because of the abstracts. You just read the abstract and that's the end. You already know what, you don't need to go in. You write references based on abstract. So it must be strong enough to stand alone. The manuscript itself as a whole is an item. Your figures and your table is a third element of your manuscript that can stand alone. Once I pick up a table or a figure, I must be able to say the whole story about that table without going into the manuscript. They must be, those are 3 critical standalone, and you must teach them like that. Last week we talked about, 2 weeks ago, on how you write your results. It must be standalone. You can conclude and infer by picking up, like we go to Bolim and the granite seller, and they used your figure as the wrap paper. I must be able to read that figure and conclude without seeing you or the main body on what that figure or table is. So those are the 3 pieces. So abstract is very important. Once again, your abstract summarizes your purpose, the methods, the main finding. It emphasizes the different points of your study in the abstract in a proportional way. Okay, and this gives you that will be given if you're doing an abstract presentation. And please do not refer in the abstract information that is not going to be there in the main body. You read in an abstract and then you go to the main body and you don't find information that you put there, or you write a conclusion that when you read the main body, it doesn't gel. Please don't do that. Anything that you found in the abstract must be found in the main body of the paper. Please, when you're drafting your abstract, remember I'm talking about abstract now, don't use personal words like I, we, and please avoid passive words. For example, the study tested, rather than it was tested by the study, or I tested in the study. Those personal words don't come up. In the discussion, there are schools of thought, or please in the abstract, we and I is not. Leave it out, okay? And please, as much as possible, avoid abbreviations, acronyms. You might need it, but don't let it come to you as a natural. It's the first thing to use. If you want to save on words, you might use these abbreviations and acronyms. But if not, leave it out. Okay? And then when you're also writing your abstract, avoid non-evaluative languages. Report, don't comment. Just report. Don't comment. That's not it. Don't make comments. Or let me say how subtly we comment. You use something like, there was Flaw, and of course give it to, let's leave it to, or you're writing your report on your figures. The prevalence is low. That's a judgment statement. What is low to you may not be low. Just report the figure. The prevalence was 0.2%. That's a report. But when you start saying the prevalence was low and the prevalence of HIV is low and the prevalence of sexual risk behavior is high, that's a judgment statement. That's a comment. Please don't put it in your abstract. You might be able to deal with that in your discussion. Once you report, just report. The prevalence is 0.3%. The sexual prevalence is 23.4%. That is your report. Okay? Go leave comments to discussion. That's very important. Don't put them. Put your figures, put your findings in your abstracts, not your comments to your finding. I hope that's helpful. Here, I also want to talk about keywords. Keywords, how you do keywords matters. Keywords help people who are searching for your literature to find them. It's very important. A key way to do your keywords is not to put the words that are already found in your manuscript, in your abstract, as the keyword. You put synonyms, words that are similar in meaning to your keywords. So if I have written in my keyword, in my manuscript, depression, anxiety, in my keyword, I will put mental health. I won't go and put depression and anxiety because it will be picked already, because mental health and depression and anxiety is already a word in the abstract. Once you're searching for it, you will find it. But a person that is looking for mental health as the keyword will not find depression, except it's loaded in the syntax of the search engine. That's once you look for mental health, anything depression, except if it's not, that word mental health will mean that your paper that has depression or anxiety will not pop up. So you use a keyword that shows synonyms to critical words in your, for example, if I wrote something Nigeria, my keyword will include Africa. Nigeria would already pick up. I'll just put Africa. So whoever is searching for Africa would ensure that they get mine and decide whether they want to include it or not. So those are critical things when you think of keywords. Please don't include words that can be found in the title, words that can be found in the body of the abstract. Use keywords that are synonym to the other keywords that are found in the title or abstract. I hope that makes sense. Okay? And please ease your readers into your manuscript. And that goes making it sync. Your background links with your objective. Your objective syncs with your methodology. The methodology syncs with the result. The biggest point of that your abstract disengage is that transition from methodology to result. It just disengages. Why? You will write a methodology and then you'll be seeing results that has no link to the methodology. You'll be looking at variables you never introduced anybody to. I'm going to do socio-demographic frameworks, and then I go into the result. I'm seeing rural area, I'm seeing urban area, I'm seeing that disengagement happens. And this is a journal that has more than enough. You hear me? They have more than enough. This is not Predator journal or journal that is looking for paper. I tell people, when you want to know a very good journal, look at their number when they give you a number. Okay, when they give you your reference number for your manuscript. You find that some journal in January, they already have, at the end of that, your paper is already number 500 and something in January. Whereas some people in January, your paper is just 004. Those people that have 500 in January, look, they have no qualms to let the paper go. So you are the one that must do the right things. And like I said, manuscript writing is ABC. Just learn the rules. Once you learn the rules, you would not get a reject. You will get support to improve your writing. You won't get a reject. And the point where you will not get a reject is the methodology. Once the methodology is right, and then this is the abstract. This is the first point the person is contacting. If it is right, it will move on into the next phase. Okay? Of course, there are also things to reject if you must follow it. If this journal, for example, you want to write a New England Journal of Medicine, which is like a top in my area, I do biomedical. They don't do epidemiology. They only report on clinical trials. Okay? But like in the period of the pandemic, the top epidemiology they will take. And then you did epidemiology in Nigeria, and then you go to New England, the Journal of Medicine. The second, in 12 hours, your paper is back to you. Less than 12 hours, it's just bouncing back because it does not fall within the scope of the work they do. One of the big things that you must learn differently from how I learned things in my own days, you would have written a paper, completed it, and then start looking for the journal. The first thing my mentor told me years ago, you look for a journal before you start writing. It made no sense to me. I was wondering, what is this? I've never heard it. But now, in my writing days, I know you must identify the journal before you start writing a manuscript. It reduces completely to 0% the risk of rejects. That is, you know how to write, so you must have identified, because you would know where it is falling. You understand the audience, and you tailor the language to the audience of the journal. The same paper, the way you write. If I'm writing, I'm going to submit to a general audience journal, I can't write grammatical specialty jargons. I can't be writing specialty jargons. I can't be writing DMFX without explaining it. But if you are going to a specialty journal, then you can move a tone higher by using specialty jargons. So you must know your audience first. You must know where you're going first before you complete the paper. All right. And if it's an abstract, if it's a conference you're going for and you're submitting your abstract, please ensure the abstract addresses the theme of the conference. I have been on a conference selection committee before, and this paper, it was the highest scoring paper, highest top, but it never got presented as an oral. It ended up going, despite my team lead going everywhere. Why? Because they just couldn't find abstracts that could make it, enough abstract to make it an oral abstract presentation. Nothing was fitting with it, because he wrote a top quality abstract, but it was out of the theme of the conference, and they couldn't form an oral abstract section with it. It ended up going into oral. So if you're writing abstract for a conference, please follow the sections. Make it relate to the sections. A well-written abstract ensures wide publications, since computer databases will be picking it up. So that's what I talked about. Good abstract, including your keywords. And of course, it will attract people to want to read it. Apologies, I said I adapted it from a conference presentation abstract that I wrote. People will want to listen to your presentation. People will want to read your paper and make conclusion after attending, reading the main paper. But it's your abstract that first attracts them, or maybe even your title. But that's what first attracts them to want to come. All right. An abstract allows readers who may not be interested in a longer read to conclude on your work. They read the abstract and they go. I am one of such. I read abstract and I've made my conclusion, because everything I need from the paper is already in the abstract. When I go to the main body, I've read the abstract, I'll go to the discussion. And then I read the first paragraph of the discussion. That's the two places I go into in my papers. Once I read the abstract, this is interesting. If I need fuller details, I go to the discussion first paragraph. I will get the message. Once I have gone to a discussion first paragraph as my second landing point, I can now go back into the results to look for details. This is how I read manuscripts. Abstract first, discussion first paragraph second, and then I move back to results. That's how I read manuscript. And everybody does that. Well, not everybody does my style, though. Everybody that is busy know how they go fish for information within the journals. They might not read everything. They know where to fish for. If I'm doing a systematic review, a scoping review, this is my line of thinking. This is how I just get my information and extract it. Okay? So it's important for, and people might want to collaborate with you. They start with your abstract. like now, we're looking for experts, subject experts to do a Delphi with. It's the abstract. It's the abstract. Once this person shows in this abstract, I see this abstract, it shows that this is an area. I pick up the name and I go check profile of this person. Once this person has published about 10 abstracts, 10 manuscripts in that line, I just put down the name of this person as a subject expert. It's the abstract. It's the abstract. Okay? So the primary audience, please know that when you write an abstract, your primary, my time is gone. Your primary objects are the reviewers. That's your primary audience. You must try to impress your reviewers. It's only after you have impressed your reviewers that you'll be going to journal readers. It's only after they have passed it that you will be thinking of journal readers. So you must do everything to make sure your reviewers get to read your abstract and are interested in it. Your journal readers is a secondary audience. So write in a way your abstract to get them. It is once you get them that you can impress them. And please note that once again, your abstract must tell a story. The methodology must answer the study objective. The result must highlight the answer to your objective, and the conclusion must address the objective. These are common flaws that I have observed when I'm dealing with abstracts. I'm sorry, once again, I adapted this from discussing for conferences. I didn't want to use my usual slides. Please know, as I've said this over and over, the judgment is made from the abstract, and in the absence of a result, there's nothing to judge. So you can't write an abstract and be referring that the results will be gotten in the main manuscript. They've dropped it. They've dropped it because they want to see the result. They want to see the methodology. So you can't be referring to that body for them to get pro content. You must write it there. The major flaws also sees the conclusion. Many times the conclusion statement is not derived from the study methodology or the study results. You just conclude things that are far away from the objective. It's just like, one general stroke. I did the study. I want to look at the prevalence of caries. I found that the prevalence of caries is 20%. And then my conclusion, children are eating too much sweet. Abba, are you kidding me? I didn't see that. That was not a study. It might be a postulation, but it cannot be a conclusion. Okay? So it must speak directly to the study objective. This study suggests that if I did a proper probability sampling, I can almost confidently say, because it's a descriptive, that the prevalence of caries in this population is high. At 20-something% is high. Good, I can conclude on that, but I can't conclude that children in this environment are eating too much sweets. It's not, my study didn't check that. Okay, so those are the kind of flaws you find when they do presentation. Please, in the abstract, don't refer to other people's work. It's not a reference point. Just ensure that you include the data inside. Many times people don't. There are journals that say don't include data. I know one where I go to, they say don't include data. Just write it normatively, but that's one out of a million journals. Okay, so always include data, except the journal says don't include data. And then do not conclude using information that you cannot garnish from the body of the abstract. As much as possible, even if there are many interesting things in your manuscript, just report those things that link straight, very streamlined. You have written a manuscript of 5,000 words. They are asking you to summarize 5,000 words in 300 words. You must be smart for what you put there. You must be smart. You must be strategic. You can't put everything. Just make sure what is linked. What you put there is answering your objective. The variables you are reporting is the variables in your methodology. And your answer is the answer to the objective. Simple. Don't go any other place and leave it like that. Finally, please know that after you've written your abstract, go back to your title. The title is only finalized after your abstract. But there are things that are required. You remember, once again, writing a manuscript is ABC. There are rules. Go and get your research guideline for whichever type of study you're doing. There are rules. Follow those rules. As the last thing you write, it must include 3 things: your study design, your study variable, your study population or location. You must find it in your title. In the conference abstract, you might write something fancy. Can caries cause brain damage? That might be for conference, but not in conference, and not in manuscript writing for a Q1, Q2 journal. This is it. It is funky enough, but it must be structured and it must have this. For example, I put this: oral health practices and oral hygiene status as indicators of suicidal ideation among adolescents in Southwest Nigeria. It is clear, my three variables: oral health practices, oral hygiene status, suicidal ideation. My study design, this is cross-sectional because I use indicators. Once you use indicators, anybody that is statistically would know this is a cross-sectional study. Okay, and then study population adolescents, study location Southwest Nigeria. Those things must be found. If otherwise, you could do things like association between oral health practices, oral hygiene status, and suicidal ideation. If I want to take away as indicators, I could do association of oral hygiene practices, oral hygiene status, and suicidal ideation. Study population adolescents, and study location Southwest Nigeria. Finally, please note, for many of you, I know that there are more people here that are not Nigerians. A number of us are Africans. English is not our native language. Go get an editor. Use Grammarly. Check your Grammarly. Use ChatGPT. Check your English. Our Nigerian English is not conventional English. And when you're going to Q1, Q2 journals, you're going to journals that are American English in origin, for the most part. By God's grace, a Nigerian journal will be there sooner than later, or there already maybe. But our English language is not the same. So you must use the English in a way that reflects who those people are you're going to engage. That's called native intelligence. I'm not saying that's superior knowledge. I'm not saying you are inferior, your English is inferior. But native intelligence suggests that you want your paper to be accepted in this space. Go use the language. It says when you're in Rome, behave like the Romans. It's just wisdom. Okay? So, acknowledge this limitation and get an editor so as to reduce the risk of your abstract being rejected. Do everything to make your abstract go through. And the idea is need syndrome cannot pass a good as idea that is need. Not in a manuscript writing for Q1, Q2. There's no idea that is need. Please state your idea properly. On that note, I want to say thank you for being here. Thanks for everybody for listening. And Toby, please take me through questions. Thank you. And if there are people that want to ask questions, let me see your hands. If there are questions, let me take me through them. Toby, over. Thank you for listening.
Thanks so very much more for that insightful lecture. We have a question from Yabo Adediba. It says, for systematic review, should location reflect in the title?
Yeah. Systematic review. If you're doing a systematic review that the focus is Nigeria, yes, it must reflect in the title. Yes, it must reflect in the title. And just before, I see there are 3 hands up. There's a mail that was sent to me personally from Wumi Salau. They say some journals wants the section of an abstract in prose form, not separate like examples given, while some maintain certain word counts. How do you ensure that all the points are highlighted? That's where your ingenuity must come. Remember, you're an academic. If they say don't separate, then don't separate them. You follow instruction. I'm only giving things that are general. And if they say the word count is less, then the word count is less. Make sure you're critical. I have said it over and over. If there's anything you're sacrificing, don't sacrifice your methodology. And it's about using words. I can write that same 300 words in 1,500. And I can use that same 300 words. If you ask me to change that 300 words to 200, you can change it. So there's nobody on this call that is in a university that did not go through GNS 001. What was GNS 001 teaching us? How to write, how to summarize. So yes, this is where the calling on your skills will be. Summarize, use your GNS 001. So there's nothing impossible when you're writing. You be flexible to whatever they're asking. Let me take the 3 hands up, Toby, and then you go back. Please help me to harness the questions there. And please,
Oh.
for those that raise their hands, please make it very brief. Our time is very short. I'll call first on Simon Azure and then Dr. Obeta. And there's a third person I'm trying to see. Dr. Obeta and then Bosede Udaisi. Please unmute your mic one after the other and ask your question.
Yes.
Very brief.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ma. I'm so grateful for the lecture you have given us this morning. In fact, very insightful. And then God bless you for doing that for a young. And we hope we'll learn a lot and then practice it. My concern is when you do mixed methods, how do you approach that one when it comes to the methodology session, where you want to make sure that the qualitative analysis will also come. Likewise, it's variables that you have used, and then that of the quantitative analysis session. How do you marry the two so that it doesn't clumsy?
Question.
Again, the second part is the comment, the use of the comment. The second part is not to use comments. Can we restrict that one to only the result section? Because when it comes to the conclusion or the recommendation part of the abstract, you are likely to use your comments.
Yes. Excellent
thank
questions.
You so much.
Excellent. Actually, excellent. What I decided today was that I would send, when I'm sending the presentation, I will send out to write for mixed method, qualitative and quantitative, because I have them, but the qualitative is not my abstract. And I said, okay, I'll just send you mixed method, because that also comes. You'll be able to see in that how to write an abstract for a mixed method. You'll be able to see. Very, very excellent question. I wanted to bring in those slides here, but I just knew that I couldn't have the time. And I already knew I had problem with the length that I was dealing with for this session. So yes, excellent question. This is all about being concise. The fact that you did a mixed method, they would not give you more space than somebody that did not do a mixed method. Or your mixed method, many times your quantitative aspect is descriptive. On less occasion is it analytical. So you find that with the descriptive, it's just you can gain on space without discussing the analytical statistical analysis, and that gain of space you use it to write what you're doing for the qualitative. It's the same way also in the result. The result also, ironically, you must also report your seeds that comes out from the result as much as you are reporting the outcomes to your descriptive analysis. So it's a lot to struggle with, but it's a skill that you must acquire and you must make it work well. I'll share the slides also of the qualitative along with this one so that you can see. I think in the qualitative I give an example like I picked out in this. Yes, thank you for raising that. It's skills, but it comes with time and practice and working on it. And even as much as I've been doing, I still have to go back and forth to remove words, look for synonyms that are simple, use phrases rather than complete sentences. But ironically, that this is the rule of the game. I can only get smarter on it. You asked the second question. Yes, that when you're using comments, if there is a comment, it comes in the conclusion, never in the result. Leave it out in the result. The conclusion is the comment. The prevalence is low. Habit is poor. That is a concluding comment. Thank you for raising that. That can come there, but not in the result. Thank you so much. And Dr. Obeta?
Prof, good morning, ma. Thank you and God bless you for this wonderful lecture this morning.
You're welcome.
I'm very grateful. Please, ma. My question is, you talked about reviewers, what the reviewers look for in a manuscript. So please, what are the key things, the key sub topics that's the things they look out for before they form their decision, either to reject or to accept a manuscript?
We have a whole section, I think it's in 2 weeks' time, on peer review. So I'm going to take you through that extensively. But in summary, the decision for a reject is usually the methodology. Once the methodology is flawed, the conclusion is that you cannot go back to the field to collect it, or you cannot change it, so they reject. If the methodology is sound, And then the other part is the English, is the analysis. They know they can give comments, and it might be minor comments or major comments. But reject is flawed based. Reject is oftentimes based on the methodology. But there's a whole session 2 weeks time on peer review process, and you'll be able to learn a lot more about that. Thanks for asking that question, Dr. Beta. Okay, very briefly, Oseti Udaisi.
It's all right, ma. Thank you, ma.
You're welcome, Dr. Beta. Oseti Udaisi. All right. So topic, and we go. Please I commit that I'll stay back to answer your questions.
Good morning.
Good morning. So I commit to staying back for those in the chat box to answering the questions. If I can't take them, we just have about 4 more minutes to go.
Good morning, ma.
Yes. Go ahead. Yes, ma.
Yes, ma. So I want to thank you for this good job you are doing every Saturday. Thank you very much, ma. Ma, I'm coming from the social science aspects of the research.
Yes,
you know that we used to report, we have a special way of reporting our results, our findings from the research. And we will talk about including the data, the value, the figures, whether it's 20% or 30%. And in our home, we have different methodologies. We have VAR, we have ARDL and others method that we use in analyzing our data. And you can either report whether it's positive or negative. In that case, you report whether the dependent variables is responsive positively or negatively. And in that case, also we translate it into the abstracts. Now, I want to ask, can we also, because though we have the coefficient aspect, which can either be positive or negative, then we also have the probability, which we can tell whether it's statistically significant or not. Then we have our benchmark, that's 5% or 10% or 1%, and usually we use 5%. Now, I want to ask, in that case, how do we report our abstracts in a research? Thank you, ma.
So you follow. Thank you very much, madam. So I think once again you follow the rules. That's all. Just follow the rules. What I've said is biomedical. It's different from labs. People in tech is completely different. Even the people in computer is completely different. You just follow the rules. The rules of the game. Follow and adapt your responses to the rules. For the most part, what you've said here is not qualitative, it's quantitative. Once you start using 5% correlation, it's qualitative. So report qualitatively. Once you are doing your analysis, you emerge as teams. That's what I'm very sure of. If you're doing qualitative analysis, you emerge teams and sub-teams. In your result, that is what is expected. That is what we look for. If you did a mixed method, you would write in the results, the findings of your quantitative and then include the qualitative. Once again, the emphasis is on teams. This one I'm very sure because I write in keyword journals for both mixed methods and qualitative research. If your methodology has to do with quantitative, report your quantitative. And like I said, once again, my flaw is towards biomedical. That's what I do. But I hope that what I've presented, 1, you can adapt it. 2, please go to your research guidelines. Your research guidelines give you completely 100% what is expected of you. Go to Equator, click Equator, and in Equator, you would see God knows there are over 50 research guidelines. That tells you if you're doing qualitative, if you're doing this form of research, this is the guideline. Use the research guideline. You would not go astray with the research guideline. I hope that helps you, madam.
Yes, ma. Thank you, ma.
Excellent. I'm really grateful. Otherwise, it's just a minute to the top of the hour. I'm going to stay back and I'm going to keep typing the answers to the issues that come up in the chat box. And on that note, I'd like to say have a wonderful day, everyone. And thanks very much for being here. I hope you found the session useful. Good day, everyone. Bye.